Have a seat, please. Welcome to the Web Conference 2018. I am Fabien Gandon. I'm General Co-Chair of the conference with my friend here, Pierre-Antoine Champin and Lionel Medini. And we are really, really happy to have you here. A few announcements before. A few rules to respect during that conference, especially during the plenaries. Please do not set up personal Wi-Fi. That would be in competition with the Wi-Fi of the conference. Please turn off your phone, or at least don't let them ring during the sessions. This year, Mozilla is sponsoring an attempt to allow people to choose whether they want to be taken into pictures or not. So whenever an orange lanyard, like this one, is visible on a person, it means the person does not want his or her photo and video to be put online, to be taken and put online. And finally, we have changed the name of the conference, so please, you should no longer use the dub or the dub 2018. These no longer exist. Every time you use dub, you put €1 in the pocket of Wendy Hall. I trust her. I hope she took big pockets today. And you should use the WebConf as the hashtag and follow the WebConf account. Now, as General Chair, the first thing we would like to do is to invite on stage Professor Dame Wendy Hall from the University of Southampton and Chair of the IW3C2. Please welcome Wendy.
Well, everybody, welcome to the Web Conference 2018. As it says up there, I'm Wendy Hall, and I'm currently chair of IW3C2. That's the International World Wide Web Conference Committee, and we have been running the conference since 1994. We welcomed W3C to the conference, but it never has been a W3C conference in the sense that IW3C2 is the organization that has run this since the first conference in Switzerland in 94. How many of you were in Switzerland in 94? Oh, there's not many hands up today. Is that we're dying out? Tim hasn't arrived yet. Oh, where? Oh, that's Tim with his hand up. It's Tim, me, who else? There's a lady. No, anyway. Tim, I didn't recognize you. So, perhaps, we're not dying out yet, but we have, you can see the list of conferences we've had since that time. First of all, 2 a year, and then now 1 a year. So it's the oldest scientific conference about the web. It is also, we've worked tirelessly over the years to really increase the citation rates and to get very good publications into the web. I think we've succeeded because it's now ranked A+. And it has a 12% selection rate, which is actually probably getting a bit too low. But we have a phenomenal number of submissions to deal with every year. We welcome them, of course, and we welcome the very high quality, and we're very sorry for those that don't get in. But of course, there's lots of other things you can put your early work into. And we are the most frequented scientific conference. We have an average of about 1,200 participants worldwide each year. But I want to say, before I go on, to give my personal thanks to the team in Lyon and IW3C2's thanks to the team in Lyon for putting on this fabulous event. We have over 1,700 people registered for the main conference, and over 2,000 will be attending in total with the associated event. So please join me in a round of applause for Lyon. It's lovely to be back. So we don't have a lot of time here, and many of these people are in the audience. This is the current membership of IW3C2. You can see that list on our website. And this year, for the first time for many years, we're actually having a town hall meeting. That is not in the Hotel de Ville. This is a town hall meeting here on Thursday afternoon for you to tell us what you want, how you would like the conference to shape up in the future, the things you like, the things you don't like, and any new ideas you've got for what we could be doing better for the community. It's now my great honor to invite Professor Chin-Won Chung up onto the stage. He ran the conference in Seoul. I always forget the year. What year was it? Oh, he's not up yet. It was about, 2014. Was Seoul 2014? They did phenomenally well. They are the conference that keeps giving, because with their surplus that they made, they have given back to the conference in many different ways. And one of the things they've done is given us an investment fund to establish a Test of Time award. Many conferences do this. These are the awards that celebrate the papers, the classic papers that have been published in the past and have had a significant impact on the field. So Professor Chung is going to help me present the award. And the press release went up this morning, but the winners are, and they're in the audience, please come up to collect the award. The paper that we have presented it to is the paper about Yago, a core of semantic knowledge, unifying WordNet and Wikipedia, with F.M. Shukanak, I can't remember their first names, Georgi Kasneski, and Gerhard Weikum. So, guys, you have one award and your certificates. Come over. Here's the award. They will all get one of these, and they all get a certificate with my autograph on. Do you want to give them a certificate? No. And then they'll say, have a vote of thanks. I don't know who's taking photos. Right. Oh, let's take a quick photo if anyone's taking photos. And then, no, I don't know if anyone is. Yes, okay. And then a quick vote of thanks. Well done, guys. Okay. Come.
Hey, so we are very grateful to receive this award. Obviously, for us, it's a big honor. And if the Yago project was so successful, that was mainly due to 3 reasons. First, we were lucky enough 10 years ago to invest in a direction of research that was, at the time, entirely utopian, that of large knowledge bases. And that was risky, but it paid off. And second, we could build on what was already there. So that was the web, that is Wikipedia, and that is WordNet. And we are very grateful for this. And last, our ideas were picked up by the community. They were enhanced, scrutinized, and taken as inspiration, along with the ideas of many other people, of course. And so this is why knowledge bases are today ubiquitous. And we believe that this is an amazing development. And we believe that we, as the WebConf community, or the www community, we are all part of that, actually. Thank you.
As a euro, please. Just to say that at the conference committee meetings, they now do give me a euro or whatever country currency we're in if they say dub. So it's the web conference. Back to the web conference.
And trust me, euro by euro, it has costed me a fortune. So now it's really a great pleasure and privilege to invite on stage the 2 program chairs who quite simply made it possible to have an excellent research track program. Please welcome Munia Lalmas and Panos Iperotis.
Good morning and welcome.
Good morning. With Munia, we took care of the research track. We have created this year 11 research tracks, as many of you already know, and would like to give special thanks to people that did really most of the work for shaping the research program. The 24 research track chairs that recruited the PC members, supervised the reviewing process, and finally we met all together in New York. So here they are. Would like to thank them. So in terms of the process, we received a record number of submissions this year, 1,461 abstracts from 4,852 authors from 62 countries, out of which we received 1,172 full papers from 3,649 authors. And then we put more than 1,200 PC members to work to generate 4,600 reviews. So after the reviewing process, we met with the track chairs in New York, and we discussed pretty much every single paper that had at least one accept recommendation. So we had two intense meetings, 2 intense days of work in New York. After quite a bit of deliberation, we ended up with 170 papers that were selected for a total of 15% acceptance rate, and a set of 23 papers were then referred to the industry track, where the industry chairs examined the papers and decided which of them should be accepted to the industry track. So in terms of statistics, the web content analysis was a pretty big track with 247 papers that were submitted, and with 347 papers, that is a track that is bigger than many CS conferences. So the acceptance rate was roughly equal across all tracks. So web economics had a 19% acceptance rate, but as you can see, the numbers were relatively small. So there were 11 papers accepted out of 58. So, and in terms of topics that emerged this year, so this word cloud from the abstracts of the papers that were accepted. And as you can see, it is the web conference, and web is prominent, but also learning is very prominently featured in this year's program, and together, of course, with more traditional topics of social search, user media, and so on. So out of the program, we also solicited nominations for the best paper. You'll learn the best paper on Friday. And
yes, so a number of papers were put forward as the best paper in the various tracks, and those have been now considered for the best paper awards that will be announced on Friday. So the papers come from, as I say, a number of tracks. They're related to the economics, recommendation, user modeling, social health, and so on. Those are the papers that really, not just with respect to the scoring and the reviews, but also the track chair really felt they were quite above everybody in terms of novelty, impact, writing, and everything. And I strongly recommend to look at them. In fact, you should look at all the papers. But if you don't have so much time, definitely look at those. They're really awesome work. Thank you. And that's it.
So really big thanks again to the PC chair, who did an amazing job, really. Okay, so a few words about the other aspect of the conference. We just talked about the 11 research tracks, but we, this year, had a total of 24 alternate additional tracks and collocated events. And we created and proposed new tracks such as journalism and misinformation and fact-checking, also the web programming track, international project challenges, developer and industry RU's role track. We also had 27 workshops on very different topics, recommender system, question answering, for instance, linked data, or recoding Black Mirror, and I'll leave you to that title to tease you. And 19 tutorials, again on very different topics, from data visualization to AI using knowledge graphs.
Talking about the proceedings, I guess you all know what conference proceedings look like. Most of you also know that in this conference series there are two proceedings volumes, one for the research tracks and one for the alternate tracks. This year we included the industry track in the main proceedings volume since the papers were originally submitted in the research tracks. And in the second volume, you have all the alternate tracks that Fabien just told you about. Some of the workshops, those who asked to be in the proceedings, as well as at least the descriptions of the 4 challenges. What's new for this year is that this is the first year where you have all proceedings both in PDF and in HTML5. And we expect this to go on to the next editions.
There's more to the web conference than just the web conference. As Fabien mentioned, we had 2 conferences integrated as alternate tracks and 2 collocated conferences. We had the Big Web, the gathering on big data on the web. We had Web for All, the 15th edition of the Web Accessibility Conference. We have the 8th International Conference on Digital Health. And Digital League, our co-organizer, have an early summer this year, as Digital Summer will happen tomorrow. Digital Summer is the B2B event organized yearly by Digital League, and they chose to take it earlier this year to collocate it with the web conference and give an opportunity to both communities to mingle and exchange. We also have this year the off of the web conference, 35 events before and after the conference in Lyon and its region, to reach a wider audience and enlarge the debate about the questions raised by the web, as it is, in fact, impacting everybody's life.
So in addition, most of you already discovered yesterday the exhibition area, which is the place where you're having coffee and the breaks, and more importantly, where you can experiment and exchange with all the stakeholders of the web, major companies. This place will also be used tomorrow for the job fair, which is also a new activity at the web conference, which are short meetings between companies offering jobs or internships and people who are interested in those positions. So speed dating for jobs, if you prefer. We have really a great number of participants in the exhibition. It's also the area where the posters will be, the job fair, as I mentioned, the digital summer village, and the different demos.
Let's talk about the conference app. As a matter of fact, this is something that originated from, this time I can say www, because it's www 2012 here in Lyon, where there was this metadata challenge where we had the data set of the conference in RDF. And we built this app in HTML5. At this time we called it a mobile app. And it improved and improved and improved, and now you have the conference app that you can find directly from the website, where you can browse the publications, the people, the authors, the organization, the keywords of the paper, when you can find the schedule to know where you want to go and how to get there, hopefully, quite quickly. This is something that you can use directly from the conference app.
Numbers. So this chart is the explanation why we haven't been sleeping until 8 days ago. It shows that only 8 days ago we broke even. That's called the inverse curve of the stress of the organizer. But we're fine now, we broke even. I also put some budget figures so that you understand what it is to run such a conference. The total expenses are, roughly speaking, 1.3 million euros to organize it. Yeah. Here is also the distribution in terms of countries. You can see we have a very nice distribution, international distribution, and the distribution in terms of sector, public sector participant, private sector participants. So a very nice sample of the stakeholders.
As Fabian mentioned, this is a lot of work. This couldn't have been possible without more than 80 chairs managing all the aspects of the conference. Their names are here. I cannot mention all of them. One of the reasons being because there's a second list here. That's unfortunate because they deserve the credit. So their names are on the website, of course. And thank you all for the hard work you put in making this conference a success, I hope. Maybe we can at least give them a round of applause.
Plenaries. We have the pleasure to have 3 keynote speakers. Today, Luciano Floridi from Oxford University. Tomorrow, Ruhi Sarikaya from Amazon Alexa. And on Friday, Laurie Face-Craner from Carnegie Mellon University. We will also have panels, 2. One tomorrow, a big panel on AI and the future of the web and the internet, with a number of names you should recognize, I believe. And this will be concluded by the French Secretary of State in charge of Digital Affairs, Mounir Majoubi. And on Friday, we will have another panel on privacy and security. All the panels include the keynote of the day, plus additional guests. Again, for the plenary session, we will have the pleasure for the closing ceremony to have a take-home message by Robert Caillot, who is quite simply the founder of IW3C2 and of this conference series. We will have the award ceremony, including best paper, best demo, best poster, and best reviews, and we will set you free.
In France, we are serious about food. I think you all know that. So it's no use for me to explain how good the specialties of Lyon that you will find in the Les Halles Paul Bocuse on Thursday evening will be. Just a few tips to get there. It is scheduled from 7 p.m. to almost midnight. It is located on 102 Cours Lafayette, which is at the corner of Cours Lafayette on Rue Garibaldi. And if you want to get there by public transportation, my best bet would be that you take a walk through the Parc de la Tête d'Or and then take bus 38 that will take you there directly.
Now, we mentioned budget. That wouldn't be possible, of course, without a number of sponsors and partners. Our gold sponsor, INRIA, our silver sponsors that you can see here, Google, Baidu, Amazon, Naver, Yahoo, IDEX Lyon, and Webcaster, and all the others. Some of them you can meet in the exhibition space, as has been told. And also our institutional partners and co-organizer, which I will now invite to join me on the stage. For Université de Lyon, please join me, Stéphane Martineau. For Digital League, Daniel Baudry. For the Lyon Métropole, Karine Doniassos. And for Region of Rhône-Alpes, Juliette Jarry. Please join me. Thank you all for making this event possible. We'll now have a short roundtables where everyone can give us their welcoming message and some information. I will start with Mr. Martineau, Director of the President's Cabinet of Université de Lyon. Why did the Université de Lyon bid to organize this web conference a second time, and what are your ambitions for this event?
Hello, everybody. Thank you for having us and being there with us. It's a great pleasure for me, in the name of the President of Université of Lyon, to welcome you here. As you said, as the second largest scientific center in France, the University of Lyon plays an important role in promoting and developing the strong potential for scientific research for the Lyon-Saint-Étienne area. It contributes to the development of major research, especially in the field of the web. And some of you may remember that University of Lyon introduced many innovations in the last edition in 2012. And that's why the IWW3C2 has kindly decided to entrust us once again, and I want to thank them for their trust. We have expanded the base of participants beyond researchers and have launched the new identity of the web conference. Another important point for our commitment and our candidacy was also the very strong support we have with our partners, the local governments in the region and the Grand Lyon, which I want to thank very, very much. This conference offers a rich and top-level scientific research program, more accessible tracks, and contents to attract all key actors in the digital sector, including entrepreneurs, which is very important for us. Obviously, the objective is to drive and encourage interaction between all these different actors. So today, we are delighted to welcome more than 2,000 participants from over 60 countries. And we will mobilize at least as many people in the off events before and after the web conference as in during the conference.
Thank you very much. Now, Mr. Baudry, General Manager of Digital League. You are the CEO of Digital League. Can you please briefly introduce Digital League, the cluster, and why you had this somehow crazy idea of being the co-organizer of the web conference with the Université de Lyon?
Thank you. Yeah, you're right. It was somehow, crazy, but we are really happy to be part of it. I think we are really hooked with the WebConf now. We are definitely huge supporters. So thank you for giving me the opportunity to say a few words about Digital League, briefly, quickly. We are a non-for-profit, membership-based organization gathering the digital industry here in the Auvergne-Rhône-Alpes region. This cluster is led by private entrepreneurs, but also by research labs, schools, and universities. And we are strongly supported, backed by the local authority, public authorities here at both regional and local level. We share the same goals of developing the economy and ultimately creating jobs. So today we have 500 members, ranging from SMEs to large companies, representing about 26,000 jobs in the Auvergne-Rhône-Alpes region. And so we are somehow proud to be considered as the leading digital cluster in France today. So this is for introducing the cluster. And to answer more precisely to your question about why joining the organization along with the university. Well, actually, we thought it was a great opportunity to help bringing this world-class conference as near as possible to our members, which is obviously a big opportunity for them. So we did that for our own interest, I would say, the interest of our members. But I think there is also more to it. I think it's also about sharing a passion for technology and innovation. So we see all these bright people coming from all over the world here in Lyon. So maybe we are a little crazy, but obviously we're not the only ones, I would say. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mrs. Karine Doniassos, Vice President for Digital Affairs of Lyon Métropole. This is the second time in less than 10 years that the web conference comes to Lyon. How would you explain the attachment of the web conference to the city of Lyon?
I cannot really tell how the organizers are attached to Lyon, but what I can tell is that we are incredibly proud to see that for the first time ever, this web conference is twice in the same city, and it's in our city. I have to say that above the remarkable work that the University of Lyon make to ensure that this conference is a success. It sounds for us like a signal to encourage us in our path, to foster again the contribution of our local innovative ecosystem to the global transformation that is driven today, mainly by, obviously, internet and what we call now the next industrial revolution. You know, there is like a very special link between the web conference and the way we have over here brought digital and web technology to the heart of our action for economic development and also our urban transformation, especially these last 5 years. 2012 has been like a kickoff of a momentum that has driven our city as being the second digital clusters today. And Lyon has become the top destination for digital innovation, but also for innovation driven by digital, thanks to a massive amount of new company that has been created in very specific segments, from web to technology, software, as we mentioned just now, and digital content. And this entrepreneurship fever has added like a layer to this academia force to form this incredible local ecosystem recently granted by the French Tech label. Most important for us today is that this critical mass of expertise in this diverse area strongly contribute to something that is bigger, which is a transformation of our industry and local economy as a whole, and also our city. For example, for the next-gen manufacturing, the factory of tomorrow, we also think that probably where there can be the most important progresses are in health, where Lyon has major assets. And also for us, digital revolution is an extraordinary opportunity to build up the city of tomorrow, which we intensively, are active with more than 100 ongoing projects today to transform our city to what's next. 2018, when we look at the different, major questions that I raised during this conference, we can see how it resonates with our priorities, our three major priorities. Cybersecurity is a strategic challenge. For us, we recently created an European clusters in cybersecurity for industrial, system and urban system. Digital, we know, is now everywhere and is a question for everyone. And we're now in a phase where our local ecosystem is strongly enough to reach entrepreneurs for sure, researchers for sure, but also students, disabled people, and elderly. And we recently launched a special community regarding social robotics, which is very important for us, because innovation has also to serve in social inclusion. And the last point is obviously artificial intelligence. And we are taking, the opportunity of this conference to launch this new non-profit organization called Lyon is Artificial Intelligence, regrouping more than 200 stakeholders in this area to make sure that we are preparing the future. So 5 years later, what we can see, it's a giant step that has been done. And this conference highlights really how Lyon is now a strong destination for innovation, digital for sure, but also our research and the academic world is well connected to business, economy, to address this global challenge we are all facing for this future city.
Thank you very much. Now, Mrs. Juliette Jarry, Vice President for Digital Affairs for the region, for the Auvergne-Rhône-Alpes region. Well, as we said, it's the first time that the web conference comes twice in a city. I think even at the scale of the region, that's the first time. So why such a commitment of the Auvergne-Rhône-Alpes region into this partnership with the web conference?
Well, first of all, I wanted to tell you how delighted I am to welcome you all, personally, of course, and on behalf of the president of the region, Laurent Wauquiez. It's an honor and it's a pleasure, and you say it's the second time, and I think it's not by accident. I think that our territory is a perfect mix between a high level of education, we have 300,000 students, a high level of research with 2,600 patents a year, which is quite a lot, And we are also the first industrial fabric in France. And as you said, all this is combined with a high quality of life. So let me just mention the Mont Blanc whiskey stations, or as you said, Bocuse or cheese. And I think that some of you will want to come back again, and why not consider staying here? Because I think that we really have this global ecosystem that makes our territory so rich and so fruitful for collaborations.
Thank you. I will now go back to Mr. Martineau for Université de Lyon. How does organizing the web conference fit into the strategy of Université de Lyon?
Our strategy in Université de Lyon is strongly directed to develop the recognition and excellency of the academic forces here in Lyon and Saint-Étienne. So in 2017, we were happy to receive an award from the French government, recognized us as one of the 10 university center main university center in France. This is important not only because this means recognition, international and national, but also this means additional funding for our research teams, for our projects. Hosting such a great international conference, especially for the second time, bringing together top new technology experts, researchers, connecting startups, companies, public, as it was said by the colleague from Digital League, perfectly fits in the dynamics and deployment of our ambitious project. We are working, and our members are working to develop some highly efficient research teams and lab on digital topics, and many of them are present here or will be present during the talks, and it's very important for us. We also develop some special training, especially in digital. For example, we recently developed a new diploma on digital transformation for companies. So this is very important for us to implement this strategy and to give it a real basis. And to finish, the Webcom Lyon, the name of our off conference, which is naturally open to the general public, is also in line with our mission to promote links between the society and science.
Thank you very much. Mr. Daniel Baudry for Digital League. So as I mentioned, tomorrow you'll have your yearly event, Digital Summer, with a dedicated village in the exhibition space and 16 business-oriented conferences. So it's a little early for the summer. Why reschedule this event this year?
Yeah, it's a bit early, but you see that the weather is so fine, so it's almost summer. Actually, it's natural for us to link research and business development. So it's as I explained earlier, it's Digital League is made of researchers, labs, and also private businesses. So I think it was I wasn't here at the time they decided that, so I'm not responsible for it. But I think it was a no-brainer for them. It's such an amazing opportunity given to the local ecosystem to benefit from this high-level research and networking event. So we decided to bring our contribution. Okay, some of you know Maud Sharaf, she's from our team. And this is some kind of a contribution to the conference.
She was very active in 2012, as many of you know.
But also we decided that moving our annual event and bringing it into the WebConf would be also an interesting contribution, bringing more private businesses. So we have on Thursday, you are invited to discover our Digital Summer Village and meet with our members, companies, network with them, and also try and benefit from our summer feelings or prizes that we have prepared for you. So you are most welcome to join us on the digital summer space on tomorrow, on Thursday. And in the last weeks, I have seen some a raise in coffee consumption from my team. I have found some empty pizza boxes here and there, after late night at the office. So obviously, it's a big effort for us to move that event from June to April, but we think it's really worth it. And after some well-deserved rest, I'm pretty sure that my team will be okay to join in for a next European edition of the WebConf. That, I mean, it must happen in Lyon for me. I'm not deciding anything, but I'm just suggesting. Thank you.
Thank you. Mrs. Karine Doniassos, what are the main challenges that Lyon Métropole and yourself has set yourself, and how can web technologies help you tackle them?
So digital is an endless matter for research, as we can see during this conference and beyond. But for me, digital is also has to be considered as a political question. If we really want to generate a form of progress, we have to, at all levels, we have to answer to this very crucial question. How do we want to live with this technology? Where do we want to go with this range of new possibilities? And what is at stake for us is the future of our city, and beyond the future of cities in general. What is at stake is an evolving society, an enhanced environment for the community that matches with very diverse aspirations. That's also what is very important. We see how artificial intelligence is driving the future of auto industry. And we launched here the first worldwide experiment of a driverless shuttle in 2014 in an open and public environment, 3 years before testing this transportation service in the Lyon district confluence. That is very, at the other part of the city. I'm talking about Navia, obviously, for those who know. Artificial intelligence promises to make the generation, transmission, and the delivery of electricity much more efficient. It's a huge promise, and Lyon is the first European pole for the number of smart grid projects that has been deployed here at the European level. We'll also be in the city, the pilot city for the National Energy Box called Linky. Few examples to show how involved we are to these new possibilities, and our objective is to, above all that, to build a more human and a more sustainable city where the life is pleasant, an healthy, a balanced city, friendly to make business, to move differently, to work differently, to be well educated to this new emerging world, and to live differently. In few words, a lifestyle that is honed, and obviously the web and more generally digital is a fundamental tool in our efforts to achieve just such an ambition.
Thank you very much. And to finish with this panel, Mrs. Juliette Jarry, you mentioned that the Auvergne-Rhône-Alpes region wants to be the Silicon Valley of Europe. As a VP for Digital Affairs, what is your vision about that future for the territory and maybe beyond?
You know, yesterday was the opening reception of the web conference at the regional hall, and we had the chance to welcome Dame Wendy Hall and Bibo White, and Bibo offered us a brilliant keynote, a tribute to the French Minitel, and that was the kind of appetizer of what is going to happen those days. But what I want to say is that this tribute that he paid to the French innovation. Actually, in the Auvergne-Rhône-Alpes region, we want those things to become possible, to become worldwide. I mean, we had a great innovation, and in some way, we did not manage to scale up or to spread this innovation over the world. So we think that today, it's not only about saying that we want to be a European reference, it's about doing it. Obviously, digital offers many opportunities, but it depends on, the good project depends on how global is the approach. And this is the reason why we voted a strategic digital roadmap for the Auvergne-Rhône-Alpes region with 3 main axes. The first one is infrastructure, because we think that we absolutely need to have very high-speed broadband, both internet and mobile, to provide all the citizens and all the companies all over the territory. As Karin said, it's very important to have smart cities, but we are absolutely convinced that we don't want to have a two-speed society. We don't have to be big smart cities and forgotten territories. So this is the reason why we need to have very high-speed broadband and infrastructure everywhere on the territory. The second axe of our digital roadmap is digital transformation. We want to provide all the companies in our territory, whatever their size is, whatever their activity is, with digital transformation support. And on this second axe, there is also one point which is very important to me, which is the basis of everything. It's training and education, both for students and for workers, because digital now is moving so fast. We need people to have a lifelong training programs. And the third axe of our digital roadmap is to handle our own digital transformation, because we can give advice to companies, but we need to be exemplar in what we do. So we are working to reduce red tape. We're working on digital citizenship, on e-administration. And I had the opportunity to discuss it with the president of Estonia a few days ago, and this is really a model for us. So we are really trying to make this vision as global as possible. But our role as a public body is to create the best conditions for people to live and to work on our territory, but then it's up to you to make it possible. So we're just working with everybody to make it possible.
Okay, thanks again to all our institutional partners and co-organizers. Thank you very much. And it's now time for science and our first keynote address. And I said science, I didn't say computer science, since our first keynote speaker, Professor Luciano Floridi, according to his Wikipedia page or resume, is not a computer scientist. He's a philosopher, which is a different thing, right? Or is it? To quote Abelson, after all, computer science is not really about computers, just like biology is not about petri dishes or microscopes. So Luciano Floridi is a professor of philosophy and ethics of information at the University of Oxford, where he directs the Digital Ethics Lab in the Oxford Internet Institute. He has written several books on those topics, which have been translated in more than 15 languages. And he sits in or chairs a number of boards or groups, just to name a few, the EU Ethics Advisory Group on ethical dimensions of data protection, the Ethics Advisory Group on the right to be forgotten in some company named Google. Recently, the UK Parliamentary Commission on Technology Ethics. And he will talk to us today about the good web, some challenges and strategies to realize it. I think that nobody here will argue about the importance of those questions, especially nowadays. I also think that nobody will argue that the answers to those questions might be only technological. So I'll leave it to you to decide if that's computer science or philosophy or both. But in any case, I'm certain that we're up for a very insightful and enlightening keynote speech for our web conference. Please welcome Professor Luciano Floridi.
Thank you. Yeah, you are. Sorry. Thank you very much. Thank you. Good morning. Well, thank you very much for this wonderful invitation. As we heard, it is an unusual position to be a philosopher among scientists, technologists, policymakers. But you also know that when things are getting a little bit more complicated and confused, perhaps a bit of philosophy does help. So my talk will be unashamedly philosophical, but also political. There will be a few bits that will be recognizable in terms of current technology and what's happening in the world. But mostly what I would like to do today is to invite everybody to dig a little bit more deeply in what is going on with our web at large, with our information society, what the problem is, and whether we can do something about it. So going straight to the introduction, I'll tell you more about the talk. This is what I like to talk in terms of the TTC predicament, the tale of two cities. Now, just to be clear, if you haven't heard about the tale of two cities, it means you're not one of the 200 million people who bought the book. It's one of the best sellers of all times. Now, if I hadn't told you that that is Dickens, if you had just read, as you probably are doing now, that text, you would have considered that a description of our time. It was the best of times, it was the worst of times. It was the age of wisdom, it was the age of foolishness. It was the epoch of belief, and it was the epoch of incredulity. It was the season of light, darkness, hope, despair, everything before us, nothing before us, and so on. Why? Well, because Dickens is essentially describing a moment of transition. It's the French Revolution. Everything is changing. The old is no longer there. The new is not coming yet. And I think that that is exactly the kind of moment we are living in. I like to exaggerate. Allow me. It's never going to happen again in the history of humanity that we move from an entirely analog world to a world that is digital and increasingly digital. And so the idea here is that something deep is happening. The web is central part of that transformation. And this is what I would like to discuss today with you. There's something not quite right with the web at the moment. It's not inevitable, and it's not irrecoverable. But the web is a bit polluted. We know that. Whose problem is it? And what's the key to the problem, this pollution that we are sort of experiencing? And is there a solution? And looking forward, do we have a human project within which a good web makes sense? Well, since the map is going to help us as a menu, it will come back in a few slides. So if you get lost here and there, just bear with me, and the map will pop up again. But first of all, what the problem is. Well, I like to describe our society as the mangrove society. Now, if you do not know where the mangrove grows, well, the mangrove grow where in wonderful weather. You just have to look at the picture. When the river or sweet water meets the sea, the salty water. Now imagine you are there, scuba diving perhaps for a moment, dream with me, and someone asks you, oh, is the water salty or is it sweet? Well, the answer is that, my dear, you don't know where we are. This is the mangrove society. It's both sweet and salty. It's brackish water. So imagine someone asks you today, are you online or are you offline? My dear, you have no idea where you are. We're both. Of course, if you walk at any time, your mobile phone is sending information about your geolocation. We know that. I don't have to explain this to this audience. Or someone asks you, oh, is it analog or is it digital? Say, your kitchen. My dear, you have no idea about my kitchen either. Because, of course, it's analog and digital at the same time. So when we say both, we mean the mixture, the sort of a hybrid that comes with brackish water, hence the mangrove society. The mangrove society is a bit of a forest, it's sort of growing a little bit like a jungle, but that world is expanding. And again, no one should have any doubt, certainly not here, about how much that is expanding. Everybody is coming to the delta of the river, living in brackish water. 2.1 billion people on Facebook, that's where they live. 1.5 billion people on YouTube, that's where they live. And so anyone, for a moment, thinking, oh, but there are hundreds or millions of people who never made a telephone call first. Who doesn't know that? Second, of course, but their lives has been determined and is being determined by those who actually make that telephone call. So do not forget for a moment that not only everybody is going to brackish water, but those who are not in brackish water, well, their lives is being shaped by those who live there, where the river meets the sea. So within the society in which we live, well, our world has been slightly polluted at the moment. Lies, propaganda, doubt, imprecisions, exaggerations, half-truths, alternate truths, manipulation, etc. And of course, inevitably, the usual tweet from the President of the United States. All that has been polluting the world as we speak. Now, in that context, let me introduce an analogy with what happens when environments become unbearable. Well, there's something called extremophiles. Well, the extremophiles are strange animals. There's a picture of one of them there. I don't think it's cute. Some people think it is, but I think it's quite revolting, to be honest. They are polluting agents, like extremophiles, that are ruining the web, that are ruining the infosphere. Now, these animals live at the edge of social environments. No, the analogy. The harsher the conditions, the more they become the only organism fit to survive. So it's a good environment for the extremophiles to live in. Now, consider that it gets even slightly worse, because the real extremophile finds that particular environment. But the social extremophile, those are able to generate the toxic conditions under which they can live. And so not only they are the fittest in that environment, but they make that environment such that they are the only ones to survive. And if this sounds a little bit too sort of high level, well, here is a good example. Hillary Clinton adopts alien baby, yeah. Sometimes you have to think that only on the other side of the Atlantic this can possibly fly. But, well, even for cynical people like myself, born in Rome, there is something deeply disturbing. Populism, for example, which is part of this extremophile way of polluting the web, it's not that it's supported by the fake news, for example. I mean, you don't convince people who are already on that side by giving them more rubbish. But by producing all that rubbish, that damage makes populism, for example, more feasible. So it's not that fake news convince people, but fake news ruin the environment within which then other things can really happen. Now, if that is the case, then inevitably we have a problem that is a bit of a self-reinforcing issue. The more you debate, for example, with people discussing fake news on the web or on Facebook or on Twitter, the more you add toxic conditions, the more the web becomes favorable to social extremophilia. So in a way, we almost have no weapons. Now, essentially, the more polluted the environment is, the more you do to make it less polluted, the more you increase chances that it gets even more polluted. It's like essentially debating with people who, shall we say, believe in AI? What can you do? I mean, you just have to leave them alone. Or singularity people, those kind of churches. Sometimes you have to resort to an old trick, Socrates and its irony. You make fun of them, but that doesn't clean the environment. So how can a healthy web be restored and maintained? We have one more problem. I told you, problems first, and then we'll see whether there's a solution. Here, the analogy is not with the extremophile in biology, but with antibiotics. Well, antibiotics are a great thing, but the only thing that they cannot fix is too much antibiotics. Antimicrobial resistance, AMR, is the ability of a microbe to resist the effects of medication previously used to treat them. Antibiotics don't work for everything. So democracy, it's a bit like an antibiotic. If something goes wrong in a country, the first thing we say, more democracy. And if something is not so much okay with a particular society, more democracy. And some institutions are really not doing their job, more democracy, more antibiotics. But what happens when a democracy is not working? More antibiotics? No, it's not working. And the more, the worse it gets. Any populism, and you must have seen what happened in Italy recently, where essentially you add more of that loose sense of democracy, it just gets worse. So I'd like to introduce here the idea of a democracy resistance. Mind, not democratic resistance, be careful. Democracy resistance, exactly like the antibiotics. A definition, the ability of a non-democratic society to resist the effects of democratic measures previously used to improve it. If you're not doing so well, you add, and at some point, your solution becomes part of the problem. Populism is an excessive amount of democracy that undermines democracy, exactly like the antibiotics. Well, if this is the case, then the web, the infosphere, the mangrove society in general have developed democracy resistance. We suffer from DR, and we need to find a way of getting out of this vicious circle. Remember, more appeal to more power to the same forces that are undermining our society is not a good idea. In short, more democracy can cure anything by itself. When democracy is not working, you need better democracy, which is really different from just more and more and more. You don't ask people for a referendum about Europe when you know that that referendum is the equivalent of a financial war, because we don't have referendum on war and taxation. If you do, you are foolish. You're called Cameron, you go home, you have more foolish people following you, and you are just destroying the legacy of a great nation. So you see, democracy can be really dangerous if you don't understand antibiotics. In that sense, I said, better democracy is not equivalent to more democracy. So that's the problem in which we are. The web is part of that, but whose problem is it? Say, okay, fine, well, not my problem, not my problem, so to speak. Well, not quite. Is it the individual's problem? Yes, it is. What I'm going to show you in a second is the World Happiness Report 2017. Things about caring, freedom, generosity, honesty, health, income, good governance. And as usual, green is good, red is bad. That's the way the world looks like for individuals. Individuals are affected by a bad web. A good web is good for those individuals. And the things I've just said don't make it that good. Or is it society's problem? A polluted web? Yes, of course it is. That's the Gini index, mostly inequality. Again, green, it's okay, red, not so okay. You see, slightly different distribution, but we can see what kind of expectations we may have. Or is it humanities at large? Not the individual, not a particular society, but all of us. Human Development Index, 2017, life, education, GDP per capita. Again, more green, the better, red, not so. Here is the outcome. And finally, you know what? Maybe it's not individual, it's society, humanity, but it's the whole planet. Happy Planet Index, 2006, environmental impact. Green, brown, that's the situation. So anyone you pick up, the individual, the society, humanity at large, the whole planet, a polluted environment, a polluted infosphere, a polluted web, it's bad for everybody. Meaning that it's everyone's problem at all levels. So if that is where the problem lies, on the shoulders of everybody, what's the key to the problem? Here, I'm afraid I have to go back to some logical analysis. That is where I come from when I was a younger guy. I grew up as a logician. And I hope you will bear with me, because it's not complicated. It just requires a bit of patience. Part of the problem is a problem that's got to do with complexity. Now, we know that complexity normally means I don't quite get it, it's so complicated. But we are shy. I don't meet people who normally say, oh, that's too complicated. I normally meet people who say, oh, that's very complex. It's so much more intellectually rewarding to describe something as complex as opposed to complicated. Complicated means you're not getting it. Complex, it is this problem. No, it's just a complex problem. Complicated, I'm not quite there. So I'm really talking about complexity here. I'm not talking about complicated. I'm not up to the task. Complexity concerns a system, its components, their relations, and process state spaces. Now, there are, as we know, so I'll be quick on this, as I know this is the right audience, there are many scientific concepts of complexity. So to the question, what is complexity, there are several answers. I'll give you 4, the standard 4, but there's a 5th, which is exactly the one we need in order to understand the key to the problem of a polluted web. The unified view looks like this. Of course, there is Kolmogorov complexity, how complex it is to generate that particular system. Anyone in software development knows that pretty well. You have, once you have the system, the state complexity, how complex the particular system in question is in itself. Of course, you also have what is called sometimes programming complexity. How complex is the dynamics, internal dynamics of that system? Not just how the elements are combined together, but how they work together. And finally, the classic, the queen of all complexities, computational complexity. How complex it is for that particular system to solve a problem, which is just another way of saying that we have problems we understand in terms of the sort of resources required to solve them. Imagine having a catalog of animals in terms of the kind of food that they take. The kind of problems that require those resources are more or less complex, all the way to NP. Now, these 4 forms or theories or understandings of complexity are well trotted, well studied. We don't need to linger. There is one missing, though, or slightly missing. Coordination complexity. Normally, how many oxydons does it take to change a bulb? You know, one of those jokes. And, well, in that case, the joke actually, if you crack it in Oxford, goes, how many dons does it take to change a bulb? And the answer is, change. So in this particular case, since I need coordination complexity, I like to say that as the per picture, 2. So how many systems does it take to solve a particular problem? Because if a problem is such that, remember, like an animal that feeds on resources, if a problem requires a lot of systems to coordinate in order to be solved, then the complexity, the coordination complexity of that problem is very high. You have a car, it's not starting. It takes 3 people to push at the same time. Coordination complexity of the car pushing problem, 3. Clear. So how do we leverage this to understand what the web, the pollution, how are we getting there? Well, the coordination complexity, bear with me for a moment, is the number of kinds of interactions. Remember the 3 people pushing the car. The degrees of mutual influence, I push, you push, oh, 1, 2, 3, go, and dependency, all together now, and scope, the car, of the consequences within a network of systems. In other words, if you could put all those nodes together and push at the same time in a coordinated way, they would be able to solve that problem which requires those resources. But we want to look at this from the problem perspective. Now, if that's the case, we have a new challenge. There are problems that have maximum degree of coordination complexity. If and only if they are unsolvable without the mobilization of the whole network. So next time you have an email which says, please don't print this, save the forest, remember, that is useless. It's a joke. Because the coordination complexity of the environmental problem is such that saving that particular piece of paper is like being the individual who goes, push the car and goes away. Anything helps? No. It's useless. It's the individual drops a glass of water in the desert. Every drop works. No, it's useless. Why? Because there is a high coordination complexity problem. And unless you reach the threshold of sufficient number of systems coordinated, that problem would not even be scratched. So the necessary condition for a problem that needs to be solved, communication. Unless the nodes talk to each other, there is no solution. A plausible requirement. The harder the problem, the more agents may be required to solve it. That seems to be quite understandable. What kind of agents? Biological and artificial. Welcome to AI. AI will be, if we do a good job, a magic, shall we say, force to solve some high coordination complexity problems. That's where we should be pushing. Other things, science fiction. Hypothesis, problems with high coordination complexity require human-machine communication and coordination. That seems to be quite obvious. So we're getting close to back to the problem. Now introduce all these little tools. The C factor, cooperation, collaboration, coordination, co-design. Well, the trouble is that in our society, we come from several centuries of fine-tuning of tools to coordinate through competition. It's called the market. Game theory is all about that. But we don't really have a robust mechanism to foster coordination independently of self-interest. Now, that is a bit of a trouble, because you end up by having 1,000 people, all goodwills, all trying to do the right thing, uncoordinated, and so normally the word that follows crime is organize. And the normal word that follows goodwill is hopeless. It's a coordination problem. The paradox of coordination complexity today is that because we live in an affluent society, the less individuals feel the need to coordinate their efforts. After all, nothing's going to happen to me. I'm going to have my car, my house, my job, my children. What's my problem? The problems, because it's a very advanced society, are coordination complex. The more individuals should coordinate their efforts, but the less they feel they should. So if you are poor in the middle of nowhere with a simple society, you coordinate, and yet the coordination complexity is not that high. You could actually do something equally well. If you live in a very rich society, oversimplifying, you should coordinate very much, but because it's a rich society, you don't feel the need. And therefore, sufficiently good locally is equally true, is not globally good enough. So at this point, I hope you are sufficiently worried, because I need to provide some kind of constructive solution. So how do we get out of this? We have these nasty animals. The web is polluted. Democracy sometimes undermines itself. The coordination complexity is a big issue. We don't know how to get out of that. What might be the solution? Well, the pollution of the web is part of a failure in the governance of the coordination complexity of our information societies. Now that I told you what that means, I hope the sentence comes as intuitive. Our society is so complex in the technical sense that needs a high degree of coordination. And yet it's exactly the society in which that coordination is not felt as a priority. You feel like you have the freedom and the leisure to vote for Donald Trump. You think it doesn't matter to complain against the government by voting for Brexit. After all, what's going to go wrong? I mean what I'm saying. So affluent societies that don't feel immediately the pain of saying, we better get this right. We better get this right together. Not so. But all this is not exactly an ethical problem. It's a problem of infra-ethics, or infrastructure, of the rules that make ethical decision more likely. Something very similar to what happens in Not in My Backyard, for another talk. So the pollution of the web can be solved only by a governance of the web, understood as design, management, and care of this ethical infrastructure or infra-ethics that facilitates well-being of society with a high degree of coordination complexity. Now, that is a bit of a mouthful, but I hope we're getting there. Society, lots of complexity, coordination required, governance of the coordination. How? By design, the kind of rules that make good behavior more likely. It's not yet ethics, but it's what makes ethical behavior more likely. So infra-ethics is, and I don't need to explain the picture to the locals, Infraethics is the infrastructure and consists of things like neutrality, rule of law, security, transparency, and sometimes even privacy. We treat these things, take transparency, as if they were ethically good in themselves. They are not. Think of it for a moment, transparency. When you vote, your vote is secret, for a good reason. Zero transparency. Oh, so transparency is not such a good thing. Oh, it's a bad thing then. No, it depends on the infrastructure that we're putting in place. If we want to have a particular outcome, for example, freedom to vote whoever you want, then there has to be a high degree of opacity. If you want to know how your money has been spent by your politicians, well, maybe transparency is a good thing. But you can tell that it's a means to an end, is an infrastructure for the real business of ethics. So infraethics is the design of, or straightforward, the conditions that facilitate. Before, for the philosophers in the room, is a transcendental condition of possibility. I won't say that again. So the agents and their choices are okay, actions and their consequences are okay, states of systems are okay, and they develop or behave morally in a way that we like. Now that is what we need to work on. So governance of the complexity of the information society, the web included, is governance of the infraethics that makes it possible. So governance as a design, management, and maintenance of the right infraethics of a coordination complex social system. I do hope that I've been succeeded in developing the vocabulary to understand all this. I said we have to dig deeper in order to extract that particular tooth. It's painful now. We could have done a better job in the past. It's a bit late. Now we have to extract it. The conceptual pain is a bit unavoidable. Good governance as the governance that facilitates the realization of the morally good states is what comes before. Now, back to us. We had a polluted environment. The environment has its own problems. Complexity, coordination, governance of that complexity and coordination. How do we do that? By designing the right infraethics. So the real challenge today is no longer good digital innovation. That any kid can do it for you. If you have enough money, you just buy the next startup, trust me. But above all, the good governance of the digital. And this is something that our politicians don't want to hear. They love to work on reactive mode, the crisis, the emergency, the last minute. This has to be done today, and therefore anything else has to happen. But anything else has to wait means we don't have a plan. We're not quite clear where we're going. And therefore, back to the metaphor, our technology is developing too fast. Well, not really. Not if you know where you're going. If you know where you're going, you want to get there as quickly as possible. Well, it's not fast enough. It's because we don't know where we're going that is too fast. It's like driving at night with no lights. Well, that's too fast. On the other hand, if you know where you're going on holiday, you can't wait to reach that particular place, oh, maybe the police will have to chase you because we're going there as quickly as we can. So how do we do all this? Remember, the problem, the complexity, the governance, the infraethics. Well, we need, among many other things, a value-driven design for the digital. Now, there are three ways of doing that. You heard some of them. You can have so-called design ethics, that pretty much law, and it tends to be intolerant. You can have ethics by design, nudging, or a pro-ethical design, some tolerant paternalism. A quick overview of each of them. This is Plato, and normally that's a good hero. Well, be careful to what you wish. That passage comes from Republic, and it's when finally the philosopher goes back to the cave and drags at gunpoint, that's what anankaizoito means, gunpoint. Compelled, it's very mild. Violently dragging someone by their hair, that's what it means. And if you read the rest, it's a painful experience. I've been watching Netflix. You're not going to drag me out of this cave, please. I'm enjoying my life here in the darkness. So that is get out of the cave moment where paternalism is violent. It's the kind of sort of paternalism that we impose because we know better. Now, mind the red word and see what happens a few centuries later. Now, the first was getting out of the cave at gunpoint. This is get into the party at gunpoint. Is another great hero. In this case, it's the master, and there is only one master, even if you are in Oxford. The master, the capital M master, that's Jesus. He said, go out to the roads and country lanes and compel. Same word. Isn't that suspicious? Compel them to come in. And that's violent too. So this is paternalism of the worst kind, the violent kind, the intolerant one. The one that does not admit for an argument is what the law does. Now, it might be perfectly fine. After all, it's Plato, it's Jesus, so that's okay. But even Rousseau, now back into a French-speaking, not French philosopher mind, has the same kind of idea. Whoever refuses to obey the general will shall be compelled to do so by the whole body. Remember, how do we solve this problem? Oh, we force them to. We force them to get out of the cave, get into the party, get into society. And mind that that particular word is the same word that translators of the New Testament use in the passage before. It's the same idea. Force. Twist their arm. Make them do so. Well, that is for the strong ethics bylaw. Or you could be a little bit more gentle. You can nudge people. And I know you know, so I'll be quick on this. Improve decisions by telling them, well, how about going in that direction with a little push as the big elephant to the small elephant? Or finally, you could actually be even more gentle. You could simply say, look, I'm not going to tell you what to do, and I'm not going to quietly, gently invite you to do something, but I'm going to force you to make a decision about what you want to do. You will not get your driving license renewed unless you tell me whether you want to be an organ donor or not. Oh, well, that's violent. Mildly. It's forcing me. Yes. What happens if I say no? Nothing. You get your driving license. And if I say yes, you still get your driving license. So what's the difference? That you will have told me. Finally. Because that decision has been postponed so many times that finally you have to decide which road will lead to the same conclusion. Force them to choose. Because how many people didn't vote in the United States? How many people stayed home during Brexit? And was it such a good idea not to go to vote last time we were in Italy? Force them to choose. That is a good idea. So in a complex information society, and the web is part of it, we may need to use all kinds of paternalism to shape the topology of the network of possible actions whenever harm will be irreplaceable. If it is too dangerous, force them. Dad, I want to jump out of the third floor window. No. And there is no but. Because it's too dangerous. But other things, you can be more gentle. When possible, we should adopt the form of paternalism most consistent with the fostering of freedom and toleration in pro-ethical design. Back to us then. I told you that we have a bit of a polluted web, not irreversibly, not necessarily. The pollution is part of the solution that we have tried several times. Sometimes more communication generates more noise, more communication. The bad generates more bad. I also told you that part of the problem is the complexity lying behind. We need to coordinate efforts in order to make sure that cleaning up is not just a tiny little effort here, a tiny little effort there. So if it is a coordination complexity problem, what kind of solution do we need to find? Well, we need to work on the design of the rules that lead to good behavior, the infra-ethics. And what exactly that means? It means that sometimes we have to force people, everybody, Rousseau-like. Sometimes we can be gentle and nudge them. And sometimes we just have to force them to make up their mind. Either way, some form of paternalism, very, very mild, or increasingly strong, will probably have to be exercised to make sure that the design of the system is such that it leads to a cleaner environment. We don't have much time left. As you know, in another context, this planet is suffering a lot from our lack of care. So at some point, we'll have to decide how much we want to cherish anything goes, and how much you want to say, unfortunately, Rousseau is right. We have to be a little bit firm on this. We are informational organisms, or at least that's the way we see today ourselves. We will see ourselves differently in the future. We saw ourselves differently in the past. They're all true pictures. They're different facets of the same complex entity, us. Our lives today and our identities are informationally fragile, very fragile, which means that we must build a healthy web friendly to informational agents, us. There's an opportunity and a necessity here to design our own human project. The web is a key part of that. Is where we come together today in the infosphere. Is essentially the elemental part of that mangrove society that I described at the beginning. We can't simply say, oh, it will take care of itself, or we'll fix it, or some rule will do it, or as long as I don't do it myself, that's okay. We need a coordinated effort. Why? Well, I have said a couple of things about Trump, so let me rectify. It's also a great democracy over there. That particular statement, we the people, it's what is at stake. And the W there could actually be read in a variety of ways. Web the people, so to speak. So we the people are the ones who can actually, as an agent, remember, cope with the coordination complexity of a world that is very more difficult to handle than it was at any time in the past. Coordination is not just emergentism. It's not enough for anyone to do the right thing for the right thing to emerge. Remember, if everyone goes there and pushes the car will not move. We need to coordinate our efforts. We can have more ambitious projects as we the people. The web is there to help us to be more ambitious in our ethical goals. We can do that if we do it together, pushing the car. And we can lower the opportunity cost, meaning that all the things we are not doing or we cannot do, well, we the people can actually take care of that. So a healthy, good web is the we the people kind of web. But remember, Rousseau, Plato, Jesus, don't get me wrong. This is not an appeal to goody-goody action by that individual or another. It's not an appeal not to print that particular email. It's an appeal to design the rules of our game such that fragility will be respected and this planet will have a future. So in that sense, we need a human project for our mature information societies. It has to be built not on our strengths, that's modernity, but on our fragilities. Then we will know what to do with AI, with IoT, with the web, and the rest of the technologies. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Oh, maybe just one more. Thank you very much, Professor Floridi, for this very interesting talk. We now have 3 mics for questions, one over here, one over there, which I don't see anymore, and one there. Yeah, there in the center, here and there. And I recall you that this is being filmed and webcasted. So for the people who don't want their image published on the web, we have a 4th microphone up there near the no photo area with the orange lanyard around it. So if you want to ask a question without being filmed, without your image being webcasted, you can also do so. So please feel free to approach the mic, then introduce yourself and ask your question.
Hi, hello. Thanks for the great talk. Augustin Chintreau from Columbia University. I don't have the rhetorical skills you have. I just want to have one clarification. You mentioned that affluence in society is a factor. So do you expect that with a feedback effect, as we are running into large problems, we'll become less influent and hence have a better coordinating behavior?
So the point there is that the more affluent a society becomes, the less each of us feels the desperate need to coordinate efforts with the neighbor. Now, it's quite a simple point. The trouble is that this simple point gets connected to another couple of points, meaning that an affluent society is also a society where coordination is more required. not because we need to help the neighbor to light the fire or find a bit of water, no, so to speak, but because the problems that we are facing are coordination complex. In other words, they require a lot of us to get together and do the right thing. So whereas in the past, coordination was just between me and my neighbor, and we could just say, I cultivate potatoes, you have a cow, you give me some milk, I'll give you some potatoes. Well, deal. Today, the problems are so much more global that unless the two of us do the same thing and push in the same direction at the same time, the problem will not be solved. And yet, precisely because both of us, shall we say, are okay in their lives, we don't feel that need. We feel, yeah, tomorrow, the day after, someone will take care of it. It's not my problem. It's politics, it's society, Europe, the transatlantic, NATO, you name it. So all of a sudden, something gets postponed when exactly that is the time when it should be felt on our skins. So how much we can do today is extraordinary compared to whatever has been doable for the whole history of humanity. And yet today we see disenchantment, disengagement, lack of interest in politics, precisely when that now we should have more of that. That is a paradox that is not illogical. It's just part of the fact that affluent means I don't think it's going to touch me too closely. I have a job, I have a car, I have a house, etc.
Thank you. We have another question over there. Please introduce yourself.
Henry Story, University of Southampton. So thank you for the very interesting talk. What I hear you say is that you need a political, societal, technical answer to the problem of information pollution in some. And in some sense, you can think of it as how do you get institutions in the web or part of the web? Currently, they're outside of it. They're not. When you go to an institution on the web, there's no information to tell you this is a website, this is a university, this is a newspaper, this is a company in Switzerland, this is a company in Italy. You have to guess about the URLs, you have to guess about all kinds of things, and some of us here in the room are experts at that, but most people have no clue. So my suggestion is to find the political willpower together with the browser vendors to allow this information, such as is published on the UK business.gov.uk or companies.gov.uk, to make it readable by web browsers in a distributed way so that they can give this information to people. So this would be a coordinated complexity problem. It's difficult to do this, but it would solve the problem of people being at loss about what kind of company they're dealing with.
Yeah, thank you. I think that is a good example of what design can do to us and for us. It's an example. There may be others. There are others. But I agree with you that essentially providing better and more refined, finely grained information to the users can help the users to take better decisions, whether that is the example in question or any other similar idea. I mean, we're also talking about a generation that is growing with these tools and is getting kind of used to the sort of common knowledge, common understanding of what's good and what's bad and what kind of website makes sense and what other doesn't. But in that context, I don't want to leave everything. I agree with you. There is no but. There's an and. And I also want to make sure that we don't rely on users 100%. The idea that everything can be resolved by the magic word education, give them more information, better access, more availability, etc. It's a bit of a trick. It means that when something goes wrong, remember, chapter 2, well then whose fault is that? The educated people who either were not educated well enough or didn't know how to use the education, etc. So you have a problem, you find education as a solution, that is also a way of allocating responsibility. And no one loves more education than the people who should be responsible in the first place. So imagine I'm a train company and I say, well, I'm going to educate my customers and make sure that they double check that everything is safe on the train. Empower the customers. So next time something goes wrong, I didn't empower you, you didn't check. Now, change that with some websites and you start getting, well, no one under 13 should be on the social web. Well, let's empower the parents to make sure, no, let's make sure that if anyone under 13 is on their website, it's your fault. Because if anyone is going to buy a drink or tobacco in England underage, it's the fault of the shop. The parents may be scolded, but the shop closed down. So here, what we have is good design to make sure that, yes, education more in terms of capabilities, affordances, but let's make sure that with that doesn't come also a reallocation of responsibility for when things don't go well, because that will be a double trick.
We have a question over there.
Yes. I have a question, Mike Amundsen in the US. So you gave examples of designing choice. You talked about the levels of paternalism. But you've also talked about this notion of coordination and cost. So I can see how we can design choice. How can we design coordination? Not just lower the cost, but can we design it so that there are other reasons, there are other things that compel me to talk to my neighbor? What are the things that we can tune there besides just choice, if there are?
Thank you. That is a wonderful question. There are a couple of engines that can be exploited when you want to design for coordination. One is the classic, I mentioned it briefly, which is self-interest. Unfortunately, that's normally all we have. So I hope I'm not going to be confusing. You design altruistic coordination by relying on the ultimate engine of self-interest, by showing that by being self-interest, you can also be altruistic. Example, incentives. The government provides some incentives. It's in my self-interest to take advantage of those incentives. The government has a plan. By taking advantage in a self-interest way of those incentives, I end up by coordinating with everybody else. We do the right thing. Disincentive. How do we coordinate plastic bags in the UK? Well, we put a tax on it. All of a sudden, boom, we all jump. A self-interest, well, because I don't want to spend the money for the bag, and we are coordinating everybody happy. The customers, the supermarket, etc. Now, this is one engine, self-interest twisted to make sure that you take it up and you make it work for altruistic behavior. It's a classic, it's modernity. It's the market, it's game theory. We have been pushing that particular strategy for centuries. We pretty know how it works, policy making. Then there's the other one, which has been more, shall we say, oversimplifying the Greek way also. And it's the other great engine, which is hope. Humans have not just self-interest, but they also have hope. And with hope, you can actually run coordination, sometimes even better than self-interest. People will do things for hope that they will not be able to do for self-interest. I might commit suicide hoping for a better world, and that would definitely override any self-interest. So hope overrides self-interest overrides reason. So anyone who runs a campaign on reason has not understood how the world works. So it's reason, self-interest, hope. If you get to hope and you say, the present is rubbish, the future will be better, then you win the campaign. If you start on the reason of self-interest, the present is not so bad, but if you vote for that guy, the future will be horrible, you're dead. That's why we have Macron here, and we don't have Hillary Clinton on the other side. The other way around. You need to promise for hope for the future, and coordination will come. You need to be able to accept that reason will not win the day. It never did. It didn't in Athens when Socrates was there. It did not end well then. Why should it end any better now? So reason, self-interest, hope.
Another question over there.
So you were talking about an individual's an action versus a coordinated action. So, and you also gave an example about person pushing a car. So I was just a little confused about that example. Like, let's say it's not about pushing a car. Let's say it's about, taking out the trash or something, or not spilling it on the ground. So if every individual feels responsible not to do that, so would that lead to a collective effort of everybody not doing it? Or at least it'll be, it won't be so dirty, so it'll be relatively clean. So what do you say about that?
Yes, so at some point, you know that sometimes the output of a particular process is irreversible in terms of understanding what generated the output. So suppose we are in a clean environment. Did we reach that clean environment by having every single individual doing the right thing, or by having a whole society coordinated so that the society producer, you can't tell. It's a clean environment. So the idea that we're going to reach the right outcome by having everybody doing the right thing is just another way of saying we coordinated. Well, but there was no coordination. It just happened that everybody did the right thing. Well, in modernity, there was a debate, Leibniz time, and it was about causality. And some people said, no, there's a causal chain here. And some other people, like Leibniz, would say, no. It's just the best possible coordination without any causal link. This clock and this clock give the same time, but they have no causal connection. They just give the same time. So these people and these people, they do the right thing, there's no coordination, and yet the outcome, yes, is possible. Now, the perfect outcome may come in different ways. All I'm arguing here is that we shouldn't bank on the best scenario, namely, everybody does the right thing. Because the best scenario, they take care of themselves. You always work on the worst scenario, namely, no one is going to do it unless we coordinate it. And that's what I'm sort of arguing. So I agree with you. I'm just talking about the B scenario, the worst scenario, where coordination is necessary. In theory, we could all of a sudden decide, walking around, and then, boom, everybody go and push the car. It's not going to happen, is it? Unless someone says, hey, you, 1, 2, 3, push. That's going to happen. The difference, the car moves. So both scenarios are possible.
Thank you.
Another question over here. In the same spirit of the previous question, I think one of the main problems is human population in the world. And in fact, we see that there are several areas in the world that the population is decreasing. One is in Europe and the other is in China. One is just everyone's doing it by himself, and the other by increasing coordination. And in fact, one way to look on that fact is just that people understand that the coordination is very complex, and they want to reduce the problem. So instead of solving the problem, they just make few people, and they reduce the complexity of coordination.
Thank you. I think I take that more as a comment. Thank you.
I think you were there. Yeah.
Okay. To have the ability to compel people to do things, you need some sort of international governance, or which organization do you see as putting the regulations in place and then enforcing them? There is no such organization right now.
Thank you. So here we have some classic recipes and some new ones. The classic work up to a certain point. National states and supranational organizations. Quick comment on this. Do not think for a moment that national states are not absolutely necessary. They're even more necessary today than ever before. It's just they become increasingly insufficient, and people get confused. Oh, it's insufficient, therefore it's not necessary. What? It's increasingly more necessary to have France, Germany, Italy doing the right thing. Of course, these are the muscles that we need there. Sufficient? Absolutely not. We need so much more. That's why we need Europe. And no one will ever convince me that no matter how much Europe stinks, it's a bad idea. It does not work, yes. It's revolt. Yes. Is the only way forward? Absolutely. Because we need that coordination. And only those shoulders will carry the day. So that's the first thing, not classic solutions. But we also have a daring solution, which I'm not sure everybody will be happy about. These new agents are also called multinationals. And from modernity, we have kept them outside the political room, in the corridor, lobbying. And I don't think it's a good idea. I would like to see them in the room, transparently voting responsibly for what is going to happen. Because if you can take, say, Apple, Amazon, the usual, the Google, the Facebook of the world, the Microsoft, the IBM, the big sort of digital companies joining us in trying to do the right thing with the web, for example, as today, what do you think is going to happen with that kind of force behind us? Now, the trouble is that we think that this is a conflict. It's a conflict between society and business, one against the other. It is not. We have other forces to fight. Pollution on the environment, pollution on the web, pollution of politics in many countries. So those are the real enemies. When we fight each other within the same kind of set of values, within more or less the kind of decency that is still out there, and I'm talking even about Facebook and Cambridge Analytica, yeah, that's already something that it's still okay-ish compared to all the other rubbish that we have. We can bring them on board, make sure that they play good corporate citizenship, and then we have a better chance to win.
We have time for maybe last quick questions over there.
Okay, yeah, hi. Ivan Brugere, University of Illinois, Chicago. I wanted to push back a little bit on your premise, basically, that there's a lot of pollution on the web, and this may be a bad thing. Actually, I think that pollution on the web is indicator of any healthy web, because without that, if I can't, for example, publish on the web that Hillary Clinton gave birth to an alien baby, I don't think it's a free web. And so what do you say if I want to be able to do whatever I want on the web, and that you may not necessarily be able to impose a polite society on the web, that people may be able to be intolerant or bigoted or so on and so on, if they want to, as they would be in their private lives?
Yes, so let's see if I can clarify a point. There's freedom at the individual level that affects only the individual. If I want to smoke whatever I want to smoke in my house, it's entirely my own business. If I want to get drunk 24/7 in my house, it's entirely my own business. And no one, anywhere, should have a word about it. But if I drink and drive, well, that's everybody's business. Because I might kill someone while driving, and it's no longer my freedom. Surely I should be able to drink as much as I want. So if anyone wants to have an intranet where all the crap in the world flies, feel free. You put it everywhere, it's affecting me. I'm actually being driven over by that rubbish. That I don't think is very socially acceptable. There has to be a bit of a balance here. In the same way as I can go and run naked in my house, but not in a public space. So this free-for-all, no matter what, forget about the consequences, we need to grow up. It's a social environment. It's an infosphere for everybody. It's a park where everybody is. Kids, anyone else. Thank you. So this idea that you just go around with a little hat and it's the free society, it's the past. It was a good moment. It's way gone. We have grown up. We're no longer teenagers. We're grown-ups. And as grown-up, we know responsibilities, and when it's okay, and trust me, I'm a ferocious defender of individual freedoms, about abortion, about divorce, you name it. I want to be able to marry whoever the heck I want, my dog included, because it's about me. But when it comes to social stuff, well, no, wait a moment, because I'm going to affect the neighbor. That coordination, I want to see it in place. And the web is for everybody. Everybody. It's not just the freedom of speech or something. For that, I think we need some rules. Sorry.
Thank you very much again.
Thank you.
Thank you. It's now time for a well-deserved coffee break. Down the escalators in the forum. Thank you very much and enjoy the conference.